We have as speakers Mr. Wim Elfrink and Mr. Sunil Bharti Mittal. May I request you all to please take your seats. To chair this session, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Sanjoy Narayan, editor of Business Today. With more than 25 years in journalism, Mr. Narayan is also on the editorial board of Men's Health and Gulf Digest India, in addition to being the COO of India Today Group Digital, the multimedia initiative of the digital domain by India Today. May I request you all to please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, to please keep your mobile phones switched off or in the silent mode. Mr. Narayan, would you please introduce our speakers?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure and privilege to be the chairperson for this session, which is on the future of communications and its role in globalization. More than 3,500 years before Christ, the Mesopotamians invented the wheel and changed the course of human civilization forever. We had to wait until the 19th century for something as momentous to come along again. Something that would again affect human civilization in such fundamental ways. I am, of course, talking about the arrival of the telegraph and the spate of newer communication technologies that have arrived on the scene in less than 200 years. In their 1863 book, The Story of the Telegraph, authors Charles F. Briggs and Augustus Maverick had this to say about the new invention, and I quote, bear with me because this is 19th century prose. Of all the marvelous achievements of modern science, the electric telegraph is transcendently the greatest and the most serviceable to mankind. The whole earth will be belted with the electric current, palpitating with human thoughts and emotions. How potent a power then is the telegraph destined to become in the civilization of the world. This binds together by a vital cord all the nations of the earth. It is impossible that old prejudices and hostilities should longer exist, while such an instrument has been created for an exchange of thought between all the nations of the earth. Briggs and Maverick were quite right about how the new medium of communication would make the earth a smaller place, but unfortunately all wrong about its power to end all hostilities. Despite the advent of newer and better real-time communication technologies, the world continues to be racked by prejudices and hostilities. If economic forces are inexorably tearing down physical boundaries in the world, then fear, prejudices, insecurities, and miscommunication are doing their best to work against those economic forces. Yet, there's no doubting the fact that the peoples of the world have traveled an enormous distance psychographically in the less than 4 decades since the first group of computers communicated with each other back in 1969. Even as recently as in 1996, there were only 45 million users of the Internet worldwide. Today, there are an estimated 1.3 billion users around the world. The world is flat, journalist Thomas Friedman famously wrote to describe the impact of information technology on national boundaries. Among his predictions is that by 2020, this free flow of information will completely blur current national boundaries as they are replaced by city-states, corporation-based cultural groupings, and or other geographically diverse and reconfigured human organizations tied together by global networks. On the other hand, we have Pankaj Ghemawat saying that the world is only semi-globalized, that there are perceived and real boundaries that stand in the way of integration. When even two individuals communicate, there will be barriers to overcome. Multiply that number by millions, and the complexities are mind-boggling. At the World Trade Organization, negotiators from different countries are trying to ensure the best possible deal for themselves, while making sure that consumers get to reap the benefits of global trade. Workers worried about job losses have turned leery of globalization. Terrorism has made people and nations distrustful of each other. Unequal distribution of wealth has made everyone, except perhaps the very rich, wonder if the new economic order really is what the world needs. Indeed, the world today is confused, fearful, and perhaps even uncertain about its own future. In such a situation, there's only one thing that can help: communication. We need the global dialogue to become richer and more transparent. In fact, how the world manages this process of communication may well determine the future of globalization. To talk about the future of communications and its role in globalization, I have two of the most eminent speakers that I could have asked for as a moderator. Sunil Bharti Mittal is without doubt one of the principal architects of the communications revolution sweeping through India. Mr. Mittal is chairman of Bharti Enterprises, whose Bharti Airtel is the biggest cellular phone company in the country. Wim F. Elfrink has dual roles at Cisco, which, as all of you know, is the premier global company that designs and sells networking and communications technology worldwide. As Chief Globalization Officer, Mr. Elfrink is leading the company's globalization strategy. And as Executive Vice President, Cisco Services, he is responsible for Cisco Services worldwide. And as Chief Globalization Officer, Mr. Elfrink is actually based in India. The session rules, ladies and gentlemen, are as follows. Each of the speakers will speak for around 25 minutes. After that, I will moderate a Q&A session between the speakers and our delegates. With that, may I now request Mr. Mittal to make his presentation.
Thank you, Sanjay. A very good morning to all of you. I'm delighted that the India Today Conclave this morning is starting with not political speeches, but a very strong leadership speech by Mukesh, and the second session being on the technology trends and what does it mean or hold for globalization. Very clearly, this is a space in which I have been personally working in for some years now. But I can say with a great deal of certainty and authority that there has been nothing more profound as communications on the face of this earth. In particular, the last 6 or 7 years have completely transformed the way the world works. And I'd like to share with you from an entrepreneurial point of view how one is managing to stay ahead and in some cases in step with the changes in technology that are taking place and changing the face of this earth and truly contributing towards globalization. And to my mind, before I begin, I must also say that what we are seeing today is just the basic platform on what a very new world order is going to emerge in the coming 10 or 15 years. Whatever was the wow factor of today is fast and very fast turning into a given of tomorrow. This is a very familiar picture that you see. Multitasking, and especially if you look at our children, holding several devices in their hand, doing multiple things all the time, telecommunications, be that basic voice communication or data services, or everybody engaged with the media in terms of entertainment and more importantly now video on demand type of services, and IT and Internet, which is becoming so pervasive that there is no life without it today. In fact, I must share with you where the future generations are moving on to. We all recall with great fondness our first telephone, our early teleprinters or telex machines, the fax machines, and coming on to see the basic computers and evolving them into wonderful handheld devices, to a sign-off which needs no communication today. I was in New York with my daughter, with Arun Srin and his daughter, and they met for the first time, and they truly liked meeting each other and wanted to stay in touch. And when they left, all they did was a handshake and they left. And when I asked the question from my daughter, you haven't even exchanged an email ID or a phone number. She said, Dad, we don't need to. I'll meet her on the Facebook. That is the new world order. I sent a mail to my son the other day, it bounced back. I called him. I said, what's going on here? He said, Dad, I've changed my email ID. I said, how are you going to be communicating with all your friends? He said, they'll find me on the Facebook. And that is the reality of today. That the communication is changing so fast that even people like us who are deep into the technology world are finding that every morning when you wake up, the world has moved. In fact, based on that, I've decided, of course, without giving my identity, to be on the Facebook myself. Because I really need to know what's going on in the minds of these youngsters. Because it's really a new world out there. Let me briefly also touch upon some of the trends in our industry. Mobile telecom is really all pervasive. 3.5 billion around the globe today. That means 1 out of more than 2 is now having a mobile phone. And the way it's rising, we will get to that 5 billion, and eventually, other than the infirm or the very little, everybody will have a mobile phone in their hand. International voice minutes are now at 220 billion, and these are only international global minutes. I've only captured the global minutes because there is no data point to pick up the other minutes. But to give you an idea, at Airtel alone, we clock 1 billion minutes a day. That's 365 billion minutes just with one company and growing. SMSs are now pushing the envelope, must have by now crossed the 2 trillion mark. That is the power of SMS. In fact, the SMSs have now far exceeded in terms of traffic, the general voice traffic. And as was said earlier, the center of gravity here is shifting to Asia. Most of this is coming out of Asia. Philippines, India, and many other parts of Asia. US is only waking up to SMS or these short data services only now. Email users from 500 million now are touching 1.2 billion. Social networking users, I spoke about Facebook, and there are many other social networking sites which are mushrooming all the time. Internet users are moving all the time. But I think more interesting is also now the extreme right hand of the column, the cable TV, the IPTV, and the satellite TV. This is where the boundaries are blurring now. The cable televisions are now providing telephony. Most of the cable network operators in the US are now providing high-quality telephony, including broadband. But more importantly, the telecom companies are striking back as well. The standard old poor man's telephone, the switched copper pair, is now carrying IPTV. India will soon be waking up to IPTV in the coming weeks itself, where you can actually do massive amounts of interactive TV viewing. And then, of course, the DTH, which is coming up in shape now, even in India, the satellite television. There are many players in this industry. I've just held out some of those who are playing in this industry. But the fact is, these are the 3 different buckets in which the communication needs of the world are being met, both for transactional issues, viewing pleasure, more importantly, self-actualization, of blogging, of sharing your photos, transactions, mobile banking. All of them are being done now in these 3 buckets, and that has really reduced the distance of the world. This has truly made the world flat. Yes, there are disparities, as Mukesh mentioned, but this is truly now leveling out the world. I must also share with you what's happening in the area of technology trends. The 4 fundamental blocks of technology. The bandwidth providers, that is principally the telecom companies. That is the Gilda's law that you're seeing here. We are doubling the bandwidth provision every 18 months. The massive amount of doses that are coming onto the network in terms of bandwidth are doubling every 18 months, without which all these applications and the community of developers would not be able to go to the next level. Equally, the processing, which is very, very important, the Moore's law, is doubling the processing capacity every 18 months. And that is keeping in tandem, in touch with both the sides. Therefore, the more processing capacity needs more capacity to be delivered across the globe. Thankfully, the capacity on the bandwidth is also moving up in tandem. But what is even more brilliant is the storage space, which is becoming extremely important now, is doubling every 13 months. The devices are becoming very savvy, very smart, to a point where now they will start worrying a lot of telecom and technology companies because they will start losing control over their services because the speeds are high, the bandwidth is available. You can now put in a small little chip which will carry gigahertz of capacity into them, which will enable the third parties to come and deliver content and services. I think more importantly, what you're going to now see is massive amount of machine-to-machine interface. A mobile phone, new ones, most of them are now carrying a tiny little chip, which is the GPS. Now that is talking to a satellite, doing a lot of functions now. Fleet management, track movement is already happening across the globe. And these devices are going to be invisible to the human eye. And this is where the next wave of technological developments will take place. Whether it is going and reading electricity meters physically to remote now, doing processing offshore, and more importantly now, having the possibility of doing online translation of languages. A lot of stuff is going on across the world. What is this doing to the affordability, which is extremely important if the whole globe is going to be connected? We have already seen some dramatic shifts here in India. Take the network side, when the capacity doubles and possibly the cost halves or more, you can generate affordability levels that the world has never seen before. The voice call rates in India, and thanks to some measure to my friend when he came with his first flush of tariffs, it shocked the nation, including us. But the fact is, when a shock therapy comes in, yeah, smart entrepreneurs re-engineer and find a way to live. And today, India is delivering telecom services at less than 2 cents. Actually, it's getting very, very close to 1.5 cents now. And this is not just voice. Take in the entire revenue of Airtel, divide by the number of minutes, that's what you get. 63 paisa net realization per rate. This throws in roaming, music, transactions, monthly rental, everything that you do on the network gets to 63 cents a minute. Incoming calls, of course, give only 30 paisa a minute. So to that extent, I would say, this has done what nobody could have imagined in the world based on technological evolutions. Today, technology allows you to go deeper and deeper into the country to those customers who we could have never imagined would be on the telecom network ever in their lifetime. Today, people who are coming onto the networks are people who earn daily wages of 60, 80, 100 rupees a day, and they are making their lives and getting connected to the globe through those services. Storage, processing, devices, all coming down. One important point here would be, if you look at the camera, the images, pixels, from $1 to 2,000, you're getting to 25,000. And where will this go in the next 5 years, you can imagine. You can just add a few more digits to this, and that is what it's going to do. And when it comes to that level, then obviously your mobile phone becomes your video camera, your camera, and a full-scale computer. Just a couple of data points. The world is now producing more transistors than grains of rice. And more importantly, at a fraction of the price of a grain of rice. The average cost of CPU, the central processing unit, is about 50 cents per hour now. Those are the levels we are achieving. And again, if you project this out 10 years, you know where the industry trends are moving. These are mind-boggling shifts in the world technological trends. Let's look at some of the applications. I mentioned some of these social networking sites. I spoke about the blogs and the voice services. But I think some of the stuff that is coming into man-machine interfaces is very interesting. Speech recognition is becoming very, very good. Today, the American troops in Iraq are constantly conversing with their local Iraqi counterparts. Online, real time. He speaks in Iraqi, he speaks back in English. This is happening now. Early days, it's being used in more defense application. Give it 2 to 3 years. A Chinese will converse with anybody in India, and you will blabber in Hindi, and you'll get a response from him back in Hindi, although he'll be speaking in Chinese. It's going to happen. No more than 2 to 3 years. What will this do to the world? Will this not make the globe as one? My God, look at the power of what's happening with this technology. That application in Iraq, which is a military application today, will become a commercial application in the next 3 years. And yes, it poses its own challenges. Certainly a country like China will have less difficulty dealing with the globe because they don't know English. They wouldn't need to. And of course, I must mention about the Western Union initiative that the mobile industry is doing now. It's not only Western Union, it is linking with the entire financial community. Today, a 50-pound transfer from South Hall into a village in Punjab costs you about 8 to 10 pounds if you want it on the same day. Through an SMS, you can do it for less than 1 pence. It has happened, it's happening, we're just waiting for the RBI approvals. Migrant laborers from across the country, let's talk about my own experiences. Bihar sends hundreds of thousands of people into Punjab during the cropping session. It's going to happen in 3 weeks from now. There will be train loads, actually more than train loads because people sit on the rooftops of the trains during this time. We'll all be moving towards Punjab and Haryana for the season of wheat, to harvest the wheat. Every day they send runners back home with envelopes. Everybody pulls in envelopes, 50 rupees, 200 rupees, 500 rupees. Somebody is sick, somebody is dying, somebody is getting married, somebody has celebrations. These monies need to go back into their homes. With one SMS at 60 paisa, you can transfer 50 rupees, 20 rupees, 100 rupees, and instant access of cash on the other side. My company alone, Airtel, has 550,000 outlets. Can any bank branch even imagine to come to even 55,000? Will be almost an impossibility. You can't even put ATMs of that order of magnitude, but you don't need to. All of these 550,000 shops collect cash every day to top up prepaid vouchers. And this money is moving into these shops, and then they have to move that money into the banks. All they need to do is start giving it out to those people who are receiving the transfers. And this is not into the future, this is happening. Philippines has kicked off, South Africa has kicked off. In fact, I am the global sponsor of this on the GSMA board. But India, we've had some difficulties because we don't know. We'll be transgressing into some financial areas, and we don't want to have another regulator on top of telecom to have RBI looking at us and governing us. So we are trying to figure this out. I would say we will miss this season, but before the next season of cropping comes up, this technology will be alive and kicking. This is also doing something magical to countries like India. It is truly flattening and leveling out a society. Of course, needs are very different. But the fact is the affordability piece on the telecommunication is now allowing everybody to be connected. And once somebody holds a phone in a village, he feels part of the society. He feels connected to the society. And that reduces the chances of him going across the line into doing things which are not beneficial to the society. I started as a telecom company, but I'm certainly, it appears, not going to end up being a telecom company. We are no more telcos. We are actually becoming lifestyle providers. One telephone number or one telephone device is going to do everything for you. Some people think it's scary. It puts in too much control into the hands of one set of service providers. My view is no, because as speeds increase on the telecom networks, as bandwidth goes up, telecom companies actually start to lose control. Because you can access services and service providers can start accessing you with whatever they need. From simple voice and data services, we have now moved to providing music, images, transactions, as I mentioned, financial transactions. This will be doing everything that a person needs. I cannot imagine that you will ever need to have credit cards, cash in the future. I don't imagine you'll have a separate camera or a separate computer. It will all be rolled into one. And of course, the final piece would be, Mukesh spoke about biometrics. This will be your biometrics too. This will be your identification, because the level of encryption that we can put into this is again one of the highest you can ever imagine. At this stage, let me also share with you a little clip, because it will show you what the customers are expecting out of convergence, how these three pieces are going to come into one form and make it simple for a customer. so that when he's at home on the big screen, or he's on his laptop, or his mobile, he's seeing the seamless benefits of technology and doesn't have to struggle to move between 5 or 10 remotes or 5 or 10 devices. So if you can have this short little presentation played up, please.
You want to hear this? It's nice.
You want to add something more?
Live in a dream, live in a home, let the rhythm take control. Live in the day, live in it now, live the moment right now.
So this is really going to be your future, that you will seamlessly move from one screen to another as you move around the globe. And it will not matter where you are, whether you are in the US or you are in a village in India. You will have all these services seamlessly provided to you from one device to another. Therefore, we are going to become, from telecom companies to deep provision of services to the society. I won't go through all this, but I would like to mention one thing is the Google Maps. Today, as you know, Google has developed tremendous capabilities on maps. Many of you may have used Google Earth or Google Maps. Now on your little device, the phone, you can download this. I have one on my little machine here, which tells me where I am, which can direct me where I am. In the near future, it's going to tell me all my friends in a radius of 1 kilometer. More importantly, it will tell me my commercial needs of buying a piece of textile or buying a pizza, and it will guide me to that. This is all ready to go now. Some people say this is going to impinge on our privacy. Now, to some extent, the answer is yes. But you can choose who you want to be exposed to. So you can give a buddy list to this site and saying, these 15 people, I always am comfortable with for them to know where I am. And they will be seeing each other on the screen, which part of the city, country, or world you are. Now, it depends on how deep you want to go into this. The fact is, on my machine today, when I have this Google Maps tracking me across the city and giving me almost a pinpoint, it's a pretty surprising element here, because my phone doesn't carry a GPS. This is Google Map on its own, talking to my phone, pulling the cell ID and playing it back to me. Now, when I ask my switch managers, are we open to Google on this? They say no. So the Google has actually bypassed our network. Now we can scramble. We can scramble our sites and start changing IDs. That can be done to block that it doesn't happen. But the fact is it needs to happen. But of course at the consent of the customer. He must therefore choose who he wants to be open to. But be prepared. You're going to be living in a very different society, because you will get exposed to these third-party, powerful community of developers who are riding on these massive investments of billions of dollars in networks which are making them faster and speedier. This is also going to be catering to all segments. It is not for elite, it's not for rural, it is consumers, as I mentioned to you. Both metro, rural is going to serve homes, it's going to serve small, medium enterprises. In fact, my view is in India, the small, medium enterprises would be the single largest beneficiary of the segment of what's happening in the technological world. They can't hire people, they can't have consultants, they can't have third-party outsourcing for them, everything. They will be the biggest beneficiary, and I'm very excited about this possibility, and developing, along with some third parties like IBM and others, applications for SMB. And of course, large enterprises will be, and I'm sure Mim will be talking a lot more about that, what's happening there. Again, some magical things are developing in the enterprise space. Challenges, I think we saw Mukesh talking about inclusive growth in the country. I think the challenge remains you have to continue to reach out. I can put out my towers. We do that on a daily basis. Hundreds of them come across the country. No electricity, no power, no roads to reach. We've had mules carrying our sites into Leh. Those sites run on generators 24/7. It's hard to reach the energy or the petrol or kerosene for them during difficult months. But you have to have the mules running to keep the sites on. The infrastructure is a problem, telecom is not. But the fact is, We have 68% of population cover in India today. This needs to get to 90% in the next 12 months. Tough task, but will be done. Will we get to 100%? Perhaps to 95%. 5% of the country's population may be difficult to cover, who may be in Nicobar or who may be in some remote places where other than satellite communications you may not be able to serve them. We need to be relevant to the people. We don't need to do all that you have seen here, this number jumbo for ordinary customers. Applications must be simple to use, applications must be simple to understand, and the good news is that's where the technology is moving. It is going to make our grandmoms press a button and get our services. That is where the technology is moving towards. And of course, the affordability factor will always be important. Let me give you some of my insights in closing. In the technology area, the network storage processing devices will get faster, deeper, broader all the time. This is not going to stop. We will aggregate and simplify, as I said. We will need to put everything together. We are developing an SDP, which is ready to be launched, actually one of the first ones in the world, to provide all community of developers to come, plug, and provide services to all 100 million customers, because you can't manage them otherwise. Business models will be different in tomorrow's world. You will cooperate and compete. Many of the people I today cooperate with IBM and others actually compete with me in the marketplace in enterprise services. Customers will enjoy, continue to enjoy, and can expect affordable and very, very rich services going into the futures. World will truly become flat. It's taken 70 years for us to come here. The telephony in 1876, the television in 1926, computers in late 40s, all this is going to be crunched in the next 10 years into providing all of these through seamless, single technology platforms so the customers can enjoy all the services at a click of a button. I believe that we are living in times which are truly exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mittal. May I now request Mr. Elfrink to make his presentation, please.
Yes. So good morning. Good morning. The last session for lunch, it's always a difficult time. It's between now and another break. I'm waiting till my presentation is coming up, and then I will address you. The future of communications and its role in globalization. I represent the Western world, if you allow me. I'm not an American. I have an accent. I'm Dutch. So I bridge between the US and India. Secondly, I represent a technology company. And I want to start with a very humble type of remark that if we would have listened just to technology, we wouldn't have been anywhere. We wouldn't have had the PC. We would have nuclear vacuum cleaners, as you can see, and copying machines wouldn't exist. So technology is just an enabler for great business leaders like we have here in the audience. And we should take that position that to get something out of technology and to dream about our vision that the network can change the way we work, play, live, and learn has to be together, but based upon a business vision. So I want to start with some realities, some things that we know. We know that we are in this century, and we are leaders for this coming century, that the changes in demographics and economic powers are unprecedented. We have never seen this in history of mankind. This enormous change of demographics, by which Asia is going to reach 5 billion people. Europe is declining. China is already aging. The US is growing, but at a complete different speed. And South America is coming up. Africa is doubling. So what are we going to do? How are we going to make the average life of citizens better? How can technology support it and enable prosperity for a bigger population of the world? If you think about the economic shift in power, I'm Dutch, I told you. 15 years ago, I was the general manager of HP in the Netherlands. In those days, the Netherlands was the number 7 from an economic power point of view. Today it's 17, and probably it's going, beyond 20. And if you look at it, that China is going to be the biggest economic power in the world. The US second, India third. But if you look at the absolute numbers, India will be bigger than Japan now. It's astonishing if you think about it, and that whole transformation. So my aim of these 20 minutes is to give you some transformational ideas how you can even scale faster and globalize faster and use technology to the benefit of your corporation and our citizens to improve quality of life. We know GDP growth 7% and higher, 70% of the world population. That has never happened before. That's a true inflection point. It's an inflection point from a demographic point of view, from an economic point of view, and it has to be an inflection point for technology companies. We have to start thinking different. So we know that 500 million people will be urbanized in the next 5 years. 500 million people will go to cities. 5 New Yorks will be built a year in this part of the world. How can we use technology to build these cities as smart cities? We see a tremendous middle class, and that middle class will create buying power, but with a scaling capability. And sometimes I think you don't even realize you're sitting in the middle of it. But when I look and I talk to, for instance, ICIC, and they say, Wim, we're going to add 60 million new customers the next 2 years, then I think that's the entire population of France.